Cheers. It is a gorgeous evening outside. Kids are in bed, the wife is gone. I'm gonna get some work done to the Chevette motor. I'm gonna get some work done to the Chevette engine. It's probably been 2, maybe 3 weeks since I posted the last video, which means it's probably still 2 weeks away from this coming out, so it might be like 5 weeks, maybe 6 by the time you see this, that I actually touched the motor last, engine, and I've gotten a ton of stuff on the go. This place is an absolute disaster area. Ouch. As you can see, it's an absolute mess everywhere. So I'm not going to address any of that. I'm going to address this. I figured I'd show you guys kind of what I'm working on as I bolt on the next few parts. First thing I thought I'd show you is the intake manifold. So this is the intake manifold that I'm running. This is a bone stock, untouched intake manifold. So this one started out as the same as one of these. The difference this has really been gutted down. On the bottoms, this is all a water jacket here for the coolant to run through. It helps warm up the engine, it helps warm up the fuel, better burning, all that crap. We don't want it. So that's all been removed. This is all the EGR section here. So there's another tunnel that runs through here, down underneath to the back. I guess it runs under this way to the back here. So that's all been removed, and I capped it off and cut that whole section right out here. The other thing we did, the most noticeable obviously, is the carburetor placement. So this here is still the factory carburetor flange, but I spun it 90 degrees so the chambers of the carburetor are spreading along the plenum of the intake manifold. Just better air distribution instead of it getting all jumbled up in there. And then the other big thing you'll see is the back. So I cut the back right off, and we opened up the runners as much as we could to match the cylinder head and the intake gaskets. So they've been opened up a fair amount. In all honesty, they've been opened up too much in some areas. I actually went through the runner, and now it's epoxied up nicely and functional, but it's not perfect by any means. The coolant port is pretty much untouched. In an ideal world, I'd like this to be about 90 degrees, shooting straight out this way, then it can run right into the radiator. There's nothing wrong with this. It works perfectly fine. It uses stock parts, so it's easy. And then the only other thing, just for fun, is I put the vacuum gauge on. It gives you a good idea. I know what it normally runs at, or it was running around 11-12 inches of vacuum at idle. So it's got a baseline, so I can tell if there comes a vacuum leak. We'll see with the new valve job and the piston rings if that bumps up the vacuum at all. Another big reason I did all this work was weight savings, believe it or not. You got to look everywhere to save weight, everywhere that you can. So this stock intake manifold weighs in on like 10 pounds on the nose. 10 pounds, a quarter ounce, we'll call it. This one weighs in almost half, 5 pounds, 12 ounces. So there's almost 5 pounds saving just in the intake manifold. So something really cool that I came across while putting the engine together was the valve cover gaskets. Usually these are really problematic, really prone to leaking. I don't like to RTV them because we have to pull them off and adjust the valves regularly. So I need them to be removable. Usually I take the cork gasket and I just glue it to the inside of the valve cover, stick it on there, try and get it as tight as you can and hope it works, and it never normally does. I've only heard stories of the rubber valve cover gaskets, figuring that it was either folklore or they've been long obsolete. Well, it just so happened that it was my lucky day when I ordered the gasket set for this, because I got the rubber gaskets for the valve covers. So what I'm going to try is I've glued the valve cover gasket, the rubber one, to the engine, and I've kept the cork valve cover gasket on the valve cover, and maybe together they'll seal up real nice. So if you've been following along with the build of this engine, you'll know the struggles and the work that I've been putting in trying to come up with some kind of windage tray. I've been asking a million different people a million different questions, tried a few different things, and just wasn't ready to put the engine together without giving it a try. So I finally came up with one that I'm happy with. It's a little rough around the edges, but I think it's gonna work out okay. It doesn't cover all 4 connecting rods, but I'm okay with that. It covers the majority of things. It's pretty rigid. I just ended up using sheet metal to do it. Put some cross brakes in. I did mount it to the main stud girdles and the main bearing caps. I've only torqued these down to about 20 foot-pounds. So, and this is pretty flexible. I'm pretty sure it's not going to adjust our center line in any way on the crankshaft. I made the openings fairly large because I'm not comfortable with real tight clearances, but it's better than nothing. It's gonna work or it's not gonna work. Only time will really tell. Last step to the bottom end is the oil pan, right? I've gone over this in other videos. It's just a small block claimer kit from Speedway Motors for a small block Chevy. Is actually the kit that I used to put the offset in there. Came with the 2 swing gates, a little bit lower sump. I got the gasket glued to the pan, and the pan's going on. So another thing I've done this year is I've made a block off plate for the mechanical fuel pump. I used to run a mechanical fuel pump on here just as a backup in case the electric failed. This year I think I'm going to go as far as actually running a second electric fuel pump as a backup. So I've made a block off plate, and all I've done is there's a push rod in there that the fuel pump used. I've kept that in there, and I've made a little extension with this spring, so it's going to keep some tension on there, and it's going to work as if the fuel pump was there. I want to keep that movement as original as possible because there's an oil passage in there, and without that rod in the proper place, it doesn't build oil pressure. So I'm hoping that with this rod in here kind of bouncing up and down as it should, it will keep the oil pressure and not cause any problems.
More to come.